On the day I was supposed to feel like a bride, I felt like a target. The flowers were perfect. The music played softly. But nothing could prepare me for what my own parents had planned. They weren't there to bless me. They were there to break me. And with my sister by their side, they nearly did. What should have been the happiest day of my life turned into a nightmare. Not because of strangers, but because of the very people who raised me. Hello, my name is Isabella, and I'm 33 years old. I was born and raised in Brookhaven, a polished, suburban town where families wave from porches and neighbors compete over lawn care. To the outside world, my childhood looked like something out of a Hallmark movie. A big house with white shutters, holiday wreaths in the windows, a mother who baked pies, and a father who ran a local construction business. But if you looked a little closer, you'd notice something missing. Me. From the moment my younger sister Mira was born, I faded into the background of my own life. My parents, Brenda and Martin, didn't just favor Mira, they worshipped her. If Mira got a paper star in kindergarten, they'd hang it on the fridge and host a pizza night. When I won a science fair, in 8th grade, Brenda barely looked up from her coffee. Mira was their shining star, the golden child. She was loud, fashionable, and dramatic. She always got the best of everything. The bigger slice of cake, the louder applause, the expensive clothes from the boutique downtown. And me? I got leftovers. Emotionally and otherwise. I wasn't unloved, exactly. Just unseen. I used to draw a lot as a kid. I'd sketch jewelry pieces in the margins of my homework, dream of designing things people would treasure. I remember once showing Brenda a locket I drew. Delicate vines, tiny birthstones, a hidden message inside. She smiled faintly and said, "That's cute, honey. But real people don't wear stuff like that." That night, I folded the paper and threw it away. I learned early on to expect little. Attention, support, pride. Those were Myra's territory. I became the quiet daughter, the easy daughter. The one who never caused waves. The one who stayed out of the way. But here's the thing about being ignored your whole life. Eventually, you stop trying to be seen. And that silence became my home. I carried it into adulthood, quietly building my life on the edges of theirs. I opened a small handmade jewelry studio, worked long hours, paid my own bills. My pieces were starting to get noticed online, and I even had a growing list of clients. But still, to my parents, I was just Isabella, their low-maintenance child. Then I met Oliver. He wasn't flashy or loud. He didn't talk over me or try to impress me with expensive things. He noticed the smallest details, the way I tucked my hair behind my ear when I was nervous, how I traced the rim of my mug while thinking. He didn't make me feel like a background character in someone else's story. For the first time in my life, someone looked at me like I mattered. And just when I started to believe I could finally write my own story, I found myself standing between a wedding and a war. I knew my parents weren't happy about the date Oliver and I chose for our wedding. They hadn't said it outright at first, but I could feel the disapproval in every phone call, every tight-lipped smile from my mother, Brenda, and the way my father, Martin, always changed the subject. It wasn't until 2 weeks after we sent out the invitations that Brenda called me one evening while I was working on a custom necklace. Her voice was sharp, almost rehearsed. "Isabella, your sister is planning her wedding too. Mira and Travis have decided on a date." I paused, my tools frozen in my hand. "That's great, when is it?" Brenda didn't hesitate. "May 15th. At 2 p.m. At the Grand Haven Hotel." I blinked in disbelief. "That's the exact date and time of my wedding," I said quietly. Brenda sighed like I was being unreasonable. Well, the hotel was a rare opportunity. Travis's father used his connections. "You're only having a small garden ceremony. This is different." I could feel my stomach turn. "So, are you asking me to cancel my wedding?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Sweetheart, Myra's wedding will be attended by important people, people who matter to our family's reputation. You could always reschedule." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had worked so hard to plan my small, meaningful ceremony. Every flower arrangement, every detail, had been chosen with love. And now I was being told to give it up. For Mira. Again. I took a breath and said as calmly as I could, "No. I'm not changing the date. We've already sent invitations, booked everything, and this day means something to me. I won't move it." Brenda was silent for a few seconds. "Martin, and I think you're making a selfish decision." I didn't respond. I just ended the call. The next few days were eerily quiet. No messages. No calls. It was like I had become invisible again, something I had long grown used to. Then the news broke. Travis's family had canceled the wedding. Apparently, they were furious that another family member had planned a wedding at the same time, especially when they expected exclusivity at the venue. Mr. Carter reportedly called off the engagement, claiming it was a sign of poor planning and family chaos. And just like that, Myra's perfect wedding dream crumbled. But instead of taking responsibility, she found a target, me. And I knew deep down, she wasn't going to let this go. The silence didn't last long. 3 days after Travis's family called off the engagement, I received a text from Mira. Just one line. "Hope you're happy. You'll regret this." I stared at the message for a while, my chest tightening. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. I hadn't ruined anything. They were the ones who tried to steal my day. All I had done was protect it. But deep down, I knew Mira. And I knew what that message meant. She wasn't just angry, she was plotting. I found out later, through Ava, that my parents were furious, not with Mira but with me. They had told extended family members that I had sabotaged my sister's engagement by refusing to reschedule. Isabella could have chosen any other day, Brenda had said bitterly to a cousin at a brunch. But no, she just had to prove a point. They acted like I had ruined something sacred. It was absurd. Ava tried to reassure me. "Let them talk," she said. "You did nothing wrong. You stood up for yourself for once. I'm proud of you." Oliver, too, was steady and calm. "Let them be angry. You're not here to please anyone anymore. We're getting married. That's what matters." I felt safe when I was with him. But a part of me couldn't relax, not completely. Mira wasn't the type to accept defeat quietly. And I was right. A week before the wedding, Ava overheard something at a local spa. One of Myra's former salon assistants, who didn't know Ava and I were close, mentioned that Mira was planning to crash the wedding. "She's gonna make her sister pay for what she did," the girl had whispered. "She bought some kind of skin spray. Said it causes an allergic reaction if sprayed on the face." "Wait, like, actual damage?" the other girl asked. "She said it's safe-ish, just painful and embarrassing. She wants to ruin her big moment." When Ava told me, I felt my entire body go cold. Brenda and Martin were in on it too. Mira had bragged that her parents would cover for her if anything happened. I should have called off the wedding right then, moved the date, gone far away. But something inside me, something that had been stepped on for years, refused to bow this time. "Let her come," I told Ava and Oliver that night. "Let them all come. I'm not afraid of them anymore." I had waited my whole life to be seen, not by my parents, not by my sister, but by myself. This wedding was my moment. I wasn't giving it up. The morning of my wedding arrived with a kind of calm I hadn't expected. The sky over Brookhaven was soft and clear, painted in pale golds and pinks. I stood in front of the mirror in the bridal suite at the garden venue, wearing a simple ivory gown I had picked myself. No designer label, no flashy beads, just elegance and grace. Ava was behind me, helping me pin the last of my hair. "You look beautiful, Isabella," she whispered. I smiled at her through the mirror. "Thank you. For everything." Outside, soft music played as the first guests arrived. Close friends. A few of Oliver's business associates. A couple of kind neighbors from the jewelry shop. It was small, but it was ours. Then I heard the hum of engines. From the upstairs window, I peeked out and froze. The gravel driveway of the garden venue was suddenly filled with black sedans and luxury cars. People in suits and elegant gowns began to step out. Ava gasped behind me. "Who are they?" Then came a gentle knock. Eric, Oliver's best friend, peeked in. His eyes twinkled. "Sorry to crash the moment, but your guest list just got a bit more high profile." What do you mean? I asked. He grinned. Oliver may have invited a few more people than expected. Before I could ask more, Oliver texted me. Don't worry. Everything will work out. I love you. The music changed. It was time. I walked down the path toward the ceremony space on my father's arm. Not Martin's, of course. He hadn't even called to say congratulations. It was Eric who had offered to walk me down the aisle. And I was grateful. When I reached the altar, Oliver was waiting. And for a moment, everything was perfect. He looked stunning in a dark navy suit, custom-tailored. His eyes locked on mine, steady and filled with pride. The guests rose, a few of them people I didn't recognize, but clearly respected Oliver deeply. We said our vows under the soft arch of vines and white blossoms. We exchanged rings. And when the officiant said, "I now pronounce you husband and wife," I felt something deep inside me shift. I had made it. Through everything. Through everyone. I was finally free. But I didn't know then that the real moment was still waiting for me, just a few minutes away, with a hiss of spray and the sting of betrayal. The reception was held under a white canopy in the back garden, where fairy lights wrapped around the trees and soft jazz played in the background. Guests mingled with glasses of champagne, laughter bubbling through the air. A long table held our modest but beautiful cake, 3 tiers, vanilla and raspberry, with hand-piped floral designs. Oliver stood beside me, his hand gently resting on the small of my back. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his voice warm. "Like I'm finally breathing," I said. But the breath caught in my throat when I saw them. From the far end of the reception area, Mira, Brenda, and Martin walked in, uninvited, unannounced, and completely shameless. Mira wore a tight black dress, her heels clicking confidently across the stone path. Brenda followed, draped in pearls. Martin kept his sunglasses on, as if to shield himself from his own cowardice. Gasps rippled through the guests. Ava immediately moved to my side. "Do you want me to call security?" I shook my head. "No. Let's see what they want." Mira approached first, her lips curled into a fake smile. "Lovely setup," she said coolly. "Very humble." Oliver stepped protectively in front of me, but I gently touched his arm. "It's okay," I whispered. Then Mira leaned in, her voice dropping into a whisper only I could hear. "You think you've won? You should have canceled when we asked. You destroyed my future, now I'll destroy your moment." Before I could even react, she reached into her purse, pulled out a small silver spray can, and sprayed it directly at my face. A burning sensation hit me instantly. My skin began to tingle, then sting. My cheeks, eyes, and chin started swelling within seconds. Guests screamed. Someone dropped a glass. I stumbled back, blinking rapidly, gasping as the pain spread like fire across my skin. "Isabella!" Ava shouted. Oliver caught me before I fell, pulling me into his arms. "Call 911 now," he barked to the crowd. Eric was already dialing, yelling into his phone. "Chemical attack. Wedding reception. Brookhaven Garden venue. Get paramedics and police here now." Mira just stood there, smiling like she'd done something clever. Brenda and Martin didn't even flinch. Brenda calmly dabbed her lipstick with a compact mirror. "Oh, stop overreacting," she muttered. "She'll survive." But they weren't expecting what happened next. One of the guests, an attorney from Oliver's business circle, had already stepped forward, holding his phone up. "It's all on video," he said. She sprayed her without provocation. "This is assault." Within minutes, police sirens echoed in the distance. 2 cruisers and an ambulance arrived at the venue entrance. The paramedics rushed to me. "Can you breathe?" one asked as they gently held my face. I think so," I whispered through the pain. Oliver held my hand the whole time. Then Officer Grant, tall and firm-voiced, approached Mira. "Miss, step away from the bride." "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "It was just a harmless spray." But the officer wasn't interested in excuses. "You are under arrest for assault with a chemical substance." As he cuffed her hands, Mira shouted, "You ruined everything, Isabella. You stole everything from me." "No," I said quietly, as the paramedics loaded me into the ambulance. I took back what was mine. Officer Grant then turned to Brenda and Martin. You two are coming as well. There is sufficient evidence of conspiracy and intent. You'll have to answer to a judge. The three of them, Mira, Brenda, and Martin, were led away in handcuffs, right in front of all the guests. The last thing I saw before the ambulance doors closed was Oliver, climbing in beside me, his jaw clenched with fury. They're going to pay for this, he said, taking my hand. I promise you, Isabella, they won't get away with it. And this time, I believed him. The hospital lights buzzed faintly overhead as I lay on the examination table, my face covered in soothing medical gel. The allergic reaction had left patches of red, inflamed skin that itched and burned every time I moved. A nurse gently applied a cool compress to my forehead. You're lucky, she said softly. Another minute of exposure and the damage could have been permanent. I wasn't feeling lucky. I was exhausted, humiliated. My wedding day had turned into a public scene, all because my own family couldn't stand to see me happy. But in the middle of it all, there was Oliver. He hadn't left my side, not for a second. He held my hand while the paramedics worked, while the doctors treated the burns, while I cried from the pain that was more emotional than physical. They really did this, I whispered to him that night, lying in the hospital bed. They ruined our wedding. They tried to ruin me. He didn't hesitate. He leaned in, eyes burning with something I had never seen in him before, righteous fury. And now they're going to face the consequences. By the next morning, Oliver had already contacted our lawyer. He wasn't just pressing charges, he was preparing to destroy the entire cover-up. Our attorney, Mr. Fields, gathered everything. A video footage from guests. Audio of Myra's whisper. You'll regret this. The spa testimony Ava overheard. Witnesses who had seen Brenda and Martin encouraging Mira earlier in the day. Medical reports from the hospital. Even the chemical analysis of the spray. Within 72 hours, a formal criminal case was filed. The charges were serious. Mira, assault with a chemical agent, intentional bodily harm, emotional abuse, public endangerment. Brenda and Martin, conspiracy to commit assault, aiding and abetting, failure to prevent harm. At the first court hearing, they tried to downplay everything. Mira claimed it was a joke. Brenda called it family drama blown out of proportion. Martin stayed mostly quiet, but when asked why he didn't intervene, he shrugged and said, "She's a grown woman. It was between the sisters." But the judge wasn't amused. This wasn't a private disagreement. This was a public, premeditated attack on a woman's wedding day. When the trial began, I walked into the courtroom not as the broken bride they expected, but as a woman who had finally reclaimed her worth. I wore a cream-colored blazer. My face had mostly healed, but a faint red mark still lingered under my left cheekbone, almost like a war scar. Oliver stood beside me the whole time. He testified with a calm rage, showing how deeply the attack had affected not just me, but our entire marriage experience. Ava took the stand next, describing the spa conversation she overheard, word for word. She said, and I quote, "She'll regret stealing my day. Mira planned this." The final blow came when our attorney played the video of Mira whispering to me just seconds before the spray. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. When it was my turn to speak, I looked directly at the judge. "Your Honor," I began, my voice steady. "I didn't just survive a chemical attack. I survived years of emotional neglect, favoritism, and being treated like a mistake by my own family. I stood up for myself for the first time in my life, and this was the price I paid." The judge exhaled deeply, then delivered the verdict. This court finds all three defendants guilty on all counts. The sentences were clear and public. Mira, 5 years in state prison, no parole. Brenda and Martin, 2 years in county jail each, plus $50,000 each in emotional damages, and a court-ordered restraining order preventing all three from contacting me or Oliver. Mira screamed in protest as the guards cuffed her. "You did this to me," she shouted at me, red-faced and trembling. "You always thought you were better." I didn't even blink. I just looked at her calmly and said, "No." I just stopped letting you step on me. And with that, I turned to Oliver, took his hand in mine, and walked out of the courtroom, not as a victim, but as a woman finally free. The courtroom echoed in my ears long after we left. Even as I stood outside in the sunlight, feeling the breeze on my newly healed skin, I could still hear Myra's last scream. The gavel's final strike. The judge's voice delivering a verdict I had once only dreamed of. Justice wasn't just served, it was witnessed. The weight of years of invisibility had finally lifted from my shoulders. Oliver and I drove back to Brookhaven in silence that day, not an uncomfortable one, but a peaceful one. His hand stayed in mine the entire drive. He didn't have to say anything. He didn't need to. We had won. But more than that, we were finally free. The following days were filled with messages from people who had attended the wedding, the trial, and even complete strangers who had heard what happened. Some sent flowers, some sent apologies for not seeing the favoritism earlier, and some just said, "Thank you. You gave women like us courage." But Oliver had something else planned, something that would finally close the painful chapter we had just ended. One morning, he placed a small envelope beside my coffee mug at the breakfast table. Inside were 2 plane tickets. "Italy?" I whispered, smiling for the first time in days. "I thought we canceled our honeymoon." He leaned in and kissed my forehead. "We delayed it, but we didn't cancel our happiness." We spent 2 beautiful weeks along the Amalfi Coast, staying in small villas with flower-draped balconies, walking through markets that smelled of fresh basil and lemons, and dancing barefoot on tiled patios under strings of warm yellow lights. There were no reporters, no parents, no screams, no courtrooms, just the sound of waves, and laughter, and peace. On the 3rd night, as we sat on a rooftop with wine glasses in hand, Oliver looked at me and said, "You know what I see when I look at you?" I smiled. "What?" "Strength, beauty, and a woman who finally chose herself." I felt my eyes sting, not from pain this time, but from gratitude. When we returned home to Brookhaven, I reopened my jewelry studio. I didn't just pick up where I left off, I redesigned everything. New signs, new displays, and a new collection called the Resilience line. Each piece told a story of healing, of boundaries, of finding your voice. Within a month, my work was featured in a regional magazine. Orders started coming in from all over the country. A local reporter reached out for an interview, and when the article came out, the headline made me cry. "The Bride Who Refused to Be Broken." I framed it and hung it on my studio wall. Sometimes customers ask me what inspired the collection. They look at me curiously and say, "Is it true what happened at your wedding?" I smile gently and answer, "Let's just say the best revenge isn't anger. It's peace and success." Because in the end, I didn't just survive them. I outgrew them. I outlasted them. And I chose a life that wasn't defined by their limitations. One evening, months later, Oliver and I stood on the front porch of our little home, watching the stars blink over Brookhaven. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. "Any regrets?" he whispered. I leaned into him and whispered back, "Not for a single second." And for the first time in my life, I didn't just feel seen. I felt whole. If this story moved you even a little, don't forget to like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Your support helps us keep telling the stories that deserve to be heard.